We are ready to go. Give the judge a signal.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and go down to the match here, and we're going to be watching these two players playing Affinity versus Jeskai Stoneblade. On your left, Christopher Ring with the Jeskai. On your right, Jacob Cook on the play with that mono blue Affinity deck, playing a tapped blue-black artifact land here on turn 1. Those artifact lands, the OG ones, Seed of Synod in those, are banned in the format. Darksteel Citadel was the only one for a long time, but Modern Horizons brought some of those artifact lands back from the dead. They just enter tapped, so they're a little bit worse, a little bit slower.
Yeah, but because of Affinity, they basically give you a mana anyway.
Yeah.
When they're tapped.
They make up for it later in the game.
I'm chuckling here at Jacob Cook's deck list. He has submitted his deck under the title Decepticons.
Nice. Love it. Christopher Ring with an interesting play here. Turn 1, Giver of Runes. You don't see that one too much in Stoneblade. Maybe this is a little bit more aggressive version. Ross, what do you think? You're taking a look at the list right now. How is this build? Is it more aggressive than normal?
Oh, definitely. It's got these Giver of Runes to help protect your key threats like Rogavan and Stoneforge Mystic, which I really like. Also helps them get through blockers. So a really good Rogavan deck this one is. That said, Memnite is a great Rogavan stopper. Though Giver of Runes does allow you to give Procolus.
That's true. Jacob Cook on his turn 2 plays Urza Saga, an important card here in the matchup. One that can generate mini threats and find an answer to like Pithing Needle or something. We have a turn 2 Cranial Plating as well, but no equip, no attack. 2 Fervent Champions from Christopher Ring, and we've seen this in these Jeskai Stoneblade decks before, using Fervent Champion alongside things like Sword of Fire and Ice or anything that has an expensive equip cost. The Fervent Champions make them so much cheaper, and it just allows for some really explosive turns. 2 Fervent Champions here are going to pump each other and attack in for 4. That's going to put Cook down to 16. Untaps. Takes a draw for turn. Going to trigger the Saga. Looks like an Ornithopter draw. And that can fly over with the Cranial Plating and potentially do some serious damage. See if Cook can explode onto the battlefield this turn.
Yeah, it's usually with these tapped lands, you kind of start a little bit slow and there's one super explosive turn out of these Affinity decks. So that's what he's going to be looked to doing, and not under any disruptive threat from Christopher Ring, because he has a much more aggressive version of Jeskai Stoneblade. This is a deck sort of archetype that was pioneered by Aspiring Spike.
Yes.
These Fervent Champions pair really well with various swords.
Yeah.
So you're able to do things like turn 1 Champion, turn 2 Stoneforge, turn 3.
Put it in and equip for free.
Yes.
Yeah. Not that kind of a start here from Ring, just an aggressive start with triple 1-drop. Gonna play it, looks like Teferi Time Raveler on 3. That can target Urza Saga if he wants. Or something like Cranial Plating, just because it costs mana, get him a little reset. Jacob Cook, no play on his turn 3, planning to activate the Saga, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Teferi going to minus, let's see what it's targeting. Probably the Saga, because it looks like we have a response from Jacob Cook, making one of those Construct tokens.
And so really not a ton in the way of interaction here in Christopher Ring's deck list for the main deck. We got 2 March of Otherworldly Light, 4 Solitude, 4 Teferis, which are a little weak against Affinity deck that is great at going wide, and 1 Otawara. This might be a tough game 1 matchup for him, because this is a matchup where you really need removal to keep artifacts off the battlefield to get that Affinity count down. So those Thought Monitors are at least a little bit expensive, and you're not casting them for 1 or 2 mana.
Yeah, Jacob Cook takes a draw. That Saga got bounced last turn. Finds a Welding Jar. That could protect him from a Lightning Bolt or similar removal spell. Doesn't protect from Prismatic Ending or Path to Exile if he has any of those.
Yeah, all of Christopher Ring's removals exile based, so Welding Jar surprisingly ineffective.
Unfortunate for Jacob, but it looks like he's cruising pretty good. The Construct that it was generated last turn off the Saga is putting up a brick wall against these Fervent Champions and the Giver of Runes. I kind of expected Christopher to go ahead and main phase the Giver of Runes on one of the Fervent Champions just to get in for 1 damage, but it's possible that it's just more valuable to play defense, block the Construct, and then get protection from Colorless afterwards. A Thoughtcast from Jacob Cook's going to allow for a burst of cards. Frogmite and Mirror Enforcer are the plays. And now Cranial Plating is going to equip onto Ornithopter. Let's see if he goes. Let's see if he goes for face or for Teferi. The Teferi's on 1, so not too threatening. This is a huge swing from Jacob Cook. It's got to be a 2-turn clock, easily.
I count a 10 ball.
All right.
Corner pocket.
Ornithopter looking pretty spicy here. Construct comes in as well. That's an easy block plus protection. The Frogmite and the Mirror Enforcer both have Summoning Sickness, so neither of those can attack. Construct here to attack possibly a slight misstep. Let's see if he gets punished for it. But with multiple other blockers on the other side of the table, probably not.
Yeah, and you're at 16 life.
Yep. All right. Protection from colorless.
Honestly, this is
block.
if Jacob Cook wasn't aware that Giver of Runes can give pro colorless, this is a good time to find out.
Yeah. It's one of those tricky cards where like giving protection from colorless is not a very common thing. And when they made Giver of Runes, they made it slightly worse than Mother Runes because it can't target itself to protect itself. But the nod was that, oh, it can protect you from those Eldrazi, or it can protect you from those artifact creatures. So a cool little synergy there against the mono blue deck.
Looks like a bunch of creatures in Christopher Ring's hand here that are not really going to help. I see 2 copies of Ranger Captain of Eos, a great card in this deck because you got a lot of good 1-drops to find between Fervent Champion, Giver of Runes, and Esper Sentinel. I also see a copy of Esper Sentinel there. Yeah, 5-card hand, but none of them very relevant in this matchup. It was a very creature-heavy draw for Christopher Ring, and with both players just kind of goldfishing and doing their thing, Affinity has the big advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only do they have just like super cheap card draw with Thoughtcast and Thought Monitor, but they also have those explosive draws featuring cranial plating or other equipment that can suit up to the creatures and do some serious damage. Quick question: is this ACAST deck playing Nettlecyst? I know they usually play some number of cranial plating. There was a time where they started playing Nettlecyst as well, and I'm curious.
Let me check on that one for you. I don't think I saw Nettlecyst, but I'll see. No copies of Nettlecyst here.
Okay.
Actually has some extra cheap artifacts. Main deck copies of Relic of Progenitus, got 2 of them, an Ether Spellbomb, all things you can find off of Urza's Saga.
Nice. And I love the toolbox.
Yeah, and the one of Gingerbread is also really nice.
Put the cranial plating on that guy.
Oh, yeah.
You got any haste creatures?
Well, Fervent Champion is a really good blocker for
we actually might see Gingerbread come out because those Fervent Champions can block it, and there are 4 of them in the deck.
I don't think a lot is going to be coming out for Jacob Cook here. Sideboard has 3 Damping Sphere, not for this matchup, 4 Metallic Rebuke. Normally I would say Rebuke pretty good in a mid-range matchup, but his bonus, Jeskai list is a lot more aggressive.
Yeah,
so
low to the ground too. 1s, 2s, and 3s. No Jason Mind Sculptor, stuff like that.
You could bring in a Pithing Needle for some of this equipment.
I mean, naming Sword of Fire and Ice is probably okay.
Yeah, but you have so many good blockers and
That's true.
blockers. I'm not sure if that's necessary, but that's definitely an option. 3 Tormod Script, not relevant. 2 Torpor Orb. Torpor Orb, maybe you want, because they have Ranger Captain and Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
See that? And then 2 copies of Hercule's Recall. Yeah, you can bounce some artifact things, but there's not a lot of artifact stuff going on.
That's more for like the mirror. You don't want that against like small ball decks with like 2 artifacts in them.
Yeah, so I think Jacob Cook going to be staying largely the same here. And then in Christopher Ring sideboard, 2 Birdman Forge Tender, not relevant in these new Affinity lists that do not have Galblast. 1 Giant Killer as a tutor target for Ranger Captain. That seems great.
Yeah.
There's definitely some big creatures you want to kill. There's a Magus of the Moon and 2 Blood Moons. Notably, Blood Moon does not change the super type of land cards. So artifact lands are still artifacts.
Yep, but they don't tap for blue anymore, which could be a big deal. But these decks often play Springleaf Drum, and Urza Saga dies to Blood Moon, so it can't find it. But
so I'm not a big fan of the moons. We got 3 Mystical Dispute, 2 Rest in Peace that aren't great.
I think people bring in Blood Moon against Saga decks all the time, and I don't think that it's ever going to be bad because Saga is far and away the best card in the deck.
It does stop Saga. Okay, I'll give you that. There's 1 Chalice of the Void here. I think that could be good on the play.
Yeah,
because you get to play it for
on 0. Yeah.
But on the draw, your opponent has probably played all their 0s. Yeah. Maybe on the play, that's okay. 1 Unlicensed Hearse, not great. A Pithing Needle, that might be a good target to stop cranial platings.
Yeah, maybe.
And then 1 Engineered Explosives, that's the real coup. That one's definitely coming in along with the Giant Killer. So we got at least 2 extra pieces of removal, and then some mediocre options. But there's definitely cards you want to get out of the deck. These 3 Esper Sentinels are very poor in the matchup. Definitely want to get those out of the deck. So I imagine we'll see some of these marginal cards come in just because there's even weaker cards in the main deck that they'd be better than.
You'd be surprised. Esper Sentinel just randomly draws cards sometimes against these Affinity decks. They have Thoughtcast, they have Cranial Plating, and they use almost all their mana every turn and or want to activate Saga alongside casting those spells. So while there's not a ton, I think that you can find a reason to cut a bunch of different stuff, and Esper Sentinel might not be the worst of the bunch.
I'm sorry, I take it back, Todd. There is 1 copy of Nettlecyst in Jacob Cook's deck. Missed it while scanning.
All right, well, Jacob Cook up a game here. We're about to start game number 2. Let's see if our players like their opening hands. Christopher Ring, Jeskai Stoneblade. This is a much more aggressive build featuring those fervent champions.
I'm actually a big fan of Nettlecyst. If I was playing this Affinity deck, I'd have more copies of that.
I loved playing the blue-white version of the Affinity deck and playing Stoneforge Mystic, and then just like one plating, and then I went crazy on Nettlecyst. I was playing like 2 or 3.
This looks like a mulligan from Christopher Ring. I think now that he knows the matchup for sure, knows that he needs some interactive hands.
Yeah. Cook looks like he's going to keep his 7 on the draw. Christopher Ring going to take the mole, but moles don't hurt nearly as bad now that we have the London mulligan. Perhaps can find interaction and put back one of those extra creatures since he is heavy on the creatures in this build.
I see plenty of creatures in that hand, but I also see a Solitude.
Yep, Solitude a big deal here.
I only see one land, but there might be another one looming over there. And if there's a second land, I think this hand's a pretty easy keep.
Yep. Has Giver of Runes in hand, Solitude, and a couple of ones we can't tell.
I think I see a Fervent Champion there. I think this is a tank, but I don't think this is a I'm not sure if I'm keeping tank. I think this is a what card do I put back tank.
Yeah, for sure. And it's probably Ranger Captain if they only have 1 or 2 lands, but it could be like one of the extra 1-drop creatures like Giver or Fervent Champion, depending on the hand. And you may want to keep all your white creatures just because of Solitude.
Yeah, Ranger Captain does go to the bottom of the library.
All right, we're off. Game number 2 begins. Fetching with, I believe, an Arid Mesa. Gonna go get a land. Shocking with a Sacred Foundry down to 17. Life total does matter in the matchup. Gotta make sure you protect it a little bit when you can, but Christopher valuing the dual land here over a basic.
That's another sign that his hand is land light.
Yep, and probably no Blood Moon either.
Is that an Esper Sentinel I see?
Maybe. I was maybe right.
Yeah, looks like Christopher agrees with you.
Well, you gotta have more white cards than Pitch of Solitude, so you gotta keep the white count high. Jacob Cook's first turn. Going to start off with Darksteel Citadel, one of the more dangerous lands in the deck, offering some explosive starts. Has a Welding Jar, a 0-mana artifact, and an Ornithopter, another 0-mana artifact, so he can play a Frogmite here on turn 1. Not the most powerful of explosive starts, but still good nonetheless. Gets 4 permanents onto the battlefield. 5 permanents on the battlefield, a second Frogmite.
And that means the Sojourner's Companion is a 2-mana card. Can't cast that one. I think I also see a Hercule's Recall in Jacob Cook's hand. Looks like he's evaluating that. Can be good against some of these big equipment if you're able to get the Stoneforge off the battlefield.
Yeah.
And then you bounce a Calder Complete. We'll see how effective it is.
All right, Cook here with 5 permanents to play on turn 1, but just a pair of Frogmites as pressure. A drawn land from Christopher Ring. I believe that's a Flooded Strand. Going to go get another land. Might have needed the land draw. Might have already had another one in hand. Unclear, but if he needed the land, this is a big pickup. I get a Hallowed Fountain, all mana colors unlocked.
This is really a base white deck, so get 2 white lands and your 2 other colors on each of them. Definitely the best setup for your mana here.
Down to 14 with the shock for Hallowed Fountain.
Painful setup.
Yep. Goes for a Fervent Champion. This does have haste, but those 2/2 Frogmites. He's going to give it protection from Colas and attack for 1. Has 1 mana left. Can pitch with Solitude on the Esper Sentinel or cast Esper Sentinel.
Looks like Christopher Ring got a little caught between lines there. I think he shocked that land untapped thinking he was going to play the Esper Sentinel, then realized that it was his only white card. Oh, no.
I believe he has a March of Otherworldly Light as well in hand, one of those alternate art ones.
Yeah.
So maybe one to use that. Could have used it on the Saga, or can use it on the Saga. Can even use it on Darksteel Citadel if he so chooses. I actually like using it on the Citadel because it means the Urza Saga is not going to be able to make any tokens.
Yeah, that makes some sense. You could get burned by some Springleaf Drums that way.
Sure.
I would have liked to see using it on the Saga in response to the trigger, so you deny them that mana as well. That is a play that you can make because Urza Saga does not gain the ability to tap for mana until that first Saga trigger resolves.
All right, 2 mana here for Sojourner's Companion. This is a Mirror Enforcer proxy.
That has like artifact land cycling or land cycling?
I think it's artifact land cycling. They basically just took one of the best cards ever printed of all time and just decided to add artifact land cycling to it, and I hate it because of that.
They also added Reach to Wild Mongrel.
Yeah.
Oh, and then awkward timing on this March. If he had done that in response to the trigger, that Sojourner's Companion couldn't have been cast.
Could have also done it during combat to blow up the land too, so that free mana source for Jacob Cook for the full turn. And you gotta imagine Christopher's beating himself up on it. Passes the turn here, can play defense with the Giver of Runes, giving protection from colors. Also has Solitude at the ready.
Getting a little caught up in that normal operation of things of casting instants on the end step, but that's a situation where it's pretty valuable to just get your removal out of the way. I do like playing defense here. I would have actually even preferred playing defense the previous turn when he got in with the Fervent Champion.
Agree, especially because he took so much damage from his Shocklands.
Yeah, so you're behind in the race because of your own lands. You're a little behind on the battlefield anyway, even before that Sojourner's Companion was cast. And you were only trading 1 damage for 2. So a lot of reasons to play it more defensively there. And now we get to just block the Sojourner's Companion. Looks like the Giver also blocked.
I guess so. Maybe he's just really afraid for his life total and trying to do max prevent, but I think this is going to end up with him too far behind. He's down to 8, facing off against a ton of pressure.
Also kind of surprised we didn't see that Esper Sentinel pitch to the Solitude. I think we'll see that this turn, but we could have just done that last turn and then blocked a Frog on the Sojourner's Companion and then blocked a Frogmite.
Could have even double blocked a Frogmite too and killed it.
But this is all really a snowball from not using that March aggressively. If that Sojourner's Companion couldn't have been cast, then the Mirror Enforcer couldn't have been cast.
Right, and these Affinity decks just rely on having a raw high number of artifacts in play. And that's kind of why I like actually killing the Dark Soul Citadel, because if the Saga's not making the Construct tokens, it does eventually die, and you go from having a land to just a random artifact. And while it can get Springleaf Drum, that's just another thing that kind of slows them down. And if you'd taken the Dark Soul Citadel, it might have made the Sojourner cost more, and then it might have made the Mirror Enforcer cost more, and then there's just not a ton of pressure on you.
It was definitely an argument for hitting the Citadel. It was just a question of when you target it.
Right.
And had Ring targeted either land early, he's able to then limit Jacob Cook's battlefield to just the 2 Frogmites. At that point, you feel pretty comfortable keeping your Giver around, free blocking with the Fervent Champion, giving it Pro Colorless, and just taking 2 a turn while you try to get something else going.
Right.
Maybe then you have the time to get to land 5, hardcast at Solitude, start gaining life with Lifelink. But yeah, draws that one Chalice the Void. That's a little bit too late for Ring and under way too much pressure.
Yeah, so that match 2-0 in favor of the Mono Blue Affinity deck, looking pretty explosive there in the first couple of turns, and perhaps a bit of missequencing, perhaps just a bad matchup, maybe not much they can do.
Definitely seemed like a rough matchup for that build of a Stoneblade deck, as opposed to the more traditional mid-range lists that have a lot more interaction and are using Stoneforge Mystic as a standalone threat, aren't really leaning that far into the equipment theme.